But it was another topsy-turvy day in baseball labor negotiations. The union zoomed just like that, just right past the 5 p.m. Eastern deadline to work out the final parts of the agreement. And almost 4 hours past the 5 p.m. deadline, we got the white smoke out of the Vatican that Major League Baseball had indeed agreed to a proposal with the union, the health safety protocols that had to be worked out, even though baseball is mandating the season. They had to work that stuff out. That the final leg of the back and forth, the ping pong match, the decision that will allow all players, this is big. This is not something to just kind of sweep under the rug. It's going to allow all players to cohabitate, who cohabitate rather, with high-risk individuals, including a pregnant spouse. They have the right to opt out. They have the right to not play, and they will be paid just like the people that have the other conditions that are allowed before not to play. And the players that sit out, not only are they going to be paid their salary not to work, but they'll also get service time as well. So this opens up the door for Mike Trout and Bryce Harper and players along that line who's got pregnant wives to say, okay, I ain't playing. Pay me my money. I'm not going to play. Now, whether they actually do that or not is an open question and will certainly be determined between now and late July. Previously, it was only the high-risk players who could opt out and still be paid, but not anymore. So the 2020 season has been given the green light. It's been green light go for baseball now. They are going to have a 60-game version of the season. It'll start July 24th. July 24th. That's going to be the latest opening day in the history of professional baseball. July 24th. So let us discuss the question, what is the good, the bad, and the ugly from the 2020 pending Major League Baseball season? So I've got Lasorda Logic, Lance the bus driver, and the toxic cocktail. And we will combine all these things together, and we are going to make a pastrami sandwich on rye bread because that sounds pretty good. That sounds really good to me right now. It's a good breakfast food. It's the breakfast of champions. All right, number one. Oh, Roberto. Let me try that again.
Number one.
Number one.
Number one.
All right, there you go. All right, so a little rusty. Come on, he's making those meatballs. So we must start with the positive because I'm a positive kind of guy. I'm Benny Brightside at my core. I've always been Benny Brightside. So I'll give you a version of what I believe is good. We'll start with just the fact there's going to be a season. Even though part of me was rooting for a complete schadenfreude and to not have a season, with every day, the odds certainly look like there was not going to be a season, and these guys were bickering and belly aching and all that stuff. But the really good thing is that we're going to get, for the first time ever in the history of baseball, a sprint. It's not going to be a marathon. Baseball's always sold the, don't worry, it's okay. Baseball's been the game of leisure. You don't have to worry when you have a bad couple of games. There's no need to panic when you get off to a terrible start in April and you have 2 bad weeks in April. You say, oh, it's early. It used to frustrate the hell out of me when I was a radio reporter, and I covered the Dodgers, and they were traditionally horrifically bad in April. And it doesn't matter, it's early. And then there's the old line from Yogi Berra, eventually it gets late early. You always had a lot of wiggle room. That was always the argument. You can figure things out. It's no big deal. But for 2020, you toss that out the window. You toss it out of the window. Every game matters. That's the slogan. I am reminded, speaking of the Dodgers, of the legendary, he's in his 90s now. He's still hanging on. Lasorda Logic, Tommy Lasorda. And we've used this quote before. He said that no matter how good you are, you're going to lose 1/3 of your games, right? 1/3, kaput, you're going to lose. That's it. You're going to lose 1/3 of your games. No matter how bad you are, you're going to win 1/3 of your games. It's the other third that make the difference. It's a version of the Sparky Anderson quote. So I tried to do the Maller math on that. So if Lasorda's logic is right, that means in a 60-game professional baseball season, whether you're a Red Sox fan, a Philly fanatic, or you like the Tigers or the Marlins or whoever, Twins, doesn't matter. In a 60-game season, if that is right, you're going to win 20, you're going to lose 20, and it's what you do with the other 20 games that are going to decide whether or not you have an amazing season. Now, does that same theory apply in this season? We will find out. Last season, the Washington Nationals, all that natitude, how did that work out? First 50 games, 19-31. First 50 games, the Washington Nationals were 19-31. They were out in the boondocks of baseball, but they had time. Because remember, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. It was last year. And so they had time to recoil back and go on and beat the hated Astros and win the World Series. That is obviously not going to be the case in 2020. So what this really does is open up for the fluke team. This allows a team that is not as talented, because we've seen, if you like baseball or any sport, you can fool them for a while, right? You can fool them for a while. Eventually, the IOUs come due, but in a 60-game season, you could see a really mediocre, marginal team sneak in through the side door and get into the postseason. Now, it's not going to be as easy now because they're not going to have the full allotment of playoff teams that they were going to add extra playoff teams, and so it's 10 instead of 16. So it's not going to be quite as easy as it would have been, but even a garden variety type of team is going to have a shot at the playoffs if they're trying. Now, the second thing here, now that we've gotten rid of the good stuff, and we kind of pushed that away, that we're done with the good stuff because it's sports radio. We can't focus on the positive. We have to focus on the negative. The bad stuff, to me, the biggest screw up in all this is the missed opportunity. Trying to get market share back. Major League Baseball is going to have roughly 1 week all to themselves, July 24th. But the NBA is really getting going about August 1st, and I'm not even sure on the timeline on hockey. But baseball's going to have about a week head start, and that's it. And then the other legacy sports leagues will start up. And keep in mind that training camps in the NFL are going to open up right around the time Major League Baseball is going to start their season. Now, that's not something we pay much attention to, NFL training camp, other than people getting hurt and that kind of stuff. But baseball had a chance to have a full month. If they had started in early July, they could have dominated the month of July and had it all to themselves. But they blew it. Right, they blew it. Also, in the bad category, dreadful, is the Fugazi rules. Not all of them I am against here, but the rule that really is getting shoved down our throats, and it sounded like we had dodged it, but it turns out we didn't dodge it. Rob Manfred has reached into his bag of tricks. He's put on Lance the bus driver's hat, a.k.a. he's driving the omnibus. Right? What is that? The omnibus. That's a political term. It's a version of the Christmas tree bill. Some people call it the omnibus bill. And an omnibus bill.
Who?
Omnibus bill is
Never heard of them.
a proposed law, but it includes a bunch of unrelated things in the law. The fine print. Now, what does that mean in baseball parlance? Extra innings are going to start with a runner on second base. It is going to happen. We will have ghost runners. Ooh, spooky. Ghost runners. So how is this going to work? Well, I believe I have found the answer to that. Several of you have asked me questions. As I understand it, and from what I have been told here, in extra inning games during the regular season, only the regular season right now, the player in the batting order that immediately preceded that frame's leadoff hitter. So the person that made the last out, in theory, will then start the following inning on second base. Magically, like they appear. It's like, ta-da! Here they are, second base. Now, what about the stats? Now, before I get to the stats, just thinking you got like some big fat catcher, and then he makes the last out, and then you in the 9th inning, and then you go to the 10th inning, and that guy's got to start. His fat ass has to start at second base. You're at a disadvantage. But if you got that speedy outfielder or second baseman that makes the last out and is not that there's many base running threats left, but just hypothetically, if there were, and that person is then on second base, boy, you got a big advantage. Now, what about the stats? Baseball is a sport that is all about the stats. That runner, that ghost runner that will appear at second base will be, according to the rules, deemed to have reached base via an error. So they're going to, for the purposes of the scorebook, that is an error at second base. However, this is the great thing about manipulating the rule book. That error will not be charged to any team or player, right? In basketball, there's these team rebounds. They're not even going to do that. They're not, because this is right out of Little League. This is right out of the pages of the Little League rule book. And in an effort to speed up games, keep in mind, there's only going to be 60 games, and they're still going to try to push those 60 games down as quickly as they can. Now, I would say if you're going to go gimmick, and I talked about this in a previous episode, if you're going to go gimmick, go all the way. Go all the way, right? How about home run derby, sudden death, and in the outfield, you have, instead of a warning track, you have like a moat with crocodiles, and you have fire spitting from the foul. I mean, just go full gimmick if you're going to go full gimmick. Why not? And you realize that not only do you have that, you also have the implementation, excuse me for saying that, for the universal designated hitter in both leagues. So all of this is said to be temporary, right? All of this is temporary. But you can bet your last dollar that these things will be sticking around. They are not leaving baseball. I don't care. Come hell or high water. It's no different than big old government, right? Nothing is so permanent as a temporary government measure. Tax increases are never temporary, right? Any kind of prop on the ballot. We're only going to raise your taxes for 5 years. 20 years later, you're still paying the tax. But once you cross the Rubicon, there's no going back. Next, you know what's going to be next? If you go to the Little League guidebook, the next thing in baseball, the ping of the aluminum bat. Right on. I'm sure there's some environmentalists that are upset with all those trees that are being taken down for our entertainment. How dare you human beings enjoy the pleasure of a wooden bat? So, hey, cancel wooden bats and bring in the aluminum bat, right? Why not? Who cares if the players could be killed with a line drive bat? It doesn't matter. All right, final point. As for the ugly part of this, we have saved the best for last. That's what we've done. So the ugly part of this. Now, what is this all about? Let's get right into it. You had billionaires crying poverty. Shout out to my homeboys, the owners. You had the bad vibes from Blake Snell on the Union side, who infamously said, "I'm not playing unless I get mine." You had that. You had, "Bro, I'm risking my life."
I'm risking my life.
That's right. All of that while 40 million Americans have reached unemployment during the apocalypse. You also had Mike Trout, Bryce Harper, and the rest who posted on social media, "The owners tell us when and where." The owners then told them when and where. The voters then said, hell no. The players voted no to a 60-game plan, only to be forced to play 60 games for less money, mind you, for less money, but they have the right to file a grievance. So that's part of the ugly. And you have to assume, until proven otherwise, the players are going to come back and have a crummy attitude. They're not going to be into it. We're looking at a toxic cocktail is what we're looking at. You've got equal parts pouting, sulking, and whining, and then you get a straw and you stir it all together is what you do. You stir it all together. Bad body language, guaranteed. Nothing more compelling than the unmotivated ball player. Now, state-sponsored MLB Network says that because of the deal the players agreed to, if they had or did not agree to, that 42% of players this year are going to be paid less than $100,000 because of that. or 100,000 or less, 42% of the players for the 60-game season. That is because they declined the agreement that would have given them an extra $33 million in salary forgiveness. And they said no, they didn't want that. So I guess we have to start a bake sale for the players unless we don't. I have no empathy for that. They had a deal. They chose not to take it, so they took a worse deal. They had the vote. They chose not to do it. You also have players further upsetting fans. You know this is coming. There will be players. Baseball wraps themselves in the flag. They mom apple pie in baseball. You're going to get national anthem protests up the wazoo from some guys in baseball. Not everybody, I would say, but you will see a fair share of those. And that'll ruffle the feathers of some hardcore baseball fans. They'll be very upset by that if they're allowed in the stadium. And it is expected that several of the biggest names in baseball will go AWOL. We don't know the names yet. I heard some buzz about Mike Trout that he might not show up. I've seen no confirmation on that either way. So we'll see whether he shows up. He's the biggest name in baseball. And there's many others that now they know they don't have to play. And they'll get paid their full money. They'll get their service time, all the perks and all that stuff. Now, some of these guys have legitimate excuses, but we're going to find out some of them do not have legitimate excuses. They just don't want to play. They just want to get money for nothing.